Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Burn the Corporate Fiction here on 9/11. Never forget the dancing Israelis. Never forget that man on kidney dialysis halfway around the world in a cave orchestrated the most sophisticated attack on the United States, where two planes took down 3 towers the day after Donald Rumsfeld announced that $2.3 trillion went missing from the Pentagon. And just so happened the very next day, the Muslims decided to attack the Pentagon right in the budget analyst office where they were investigating the missing $2.3 trillion. Never forget lucky Larry Silverstein, who never missed a day of work in his life except for that day because his wife conveniently convinced him to go to a dentist appointment, if I remember correctly, right? He also had just recently purchased the Trade Center, right, the Twin Towers. It was considered a bad investment because it was filled with lead paint, right? It was going to cost a fortune to renovate, and most people in the business world were not even using the Trade Center anymore. He took out an insurance policy citing specifically acts of terrorism, which it was a clause that paid double, right? And he made, if I remember correctly, either close to or over $1 billion off of that attack. So they call him Lucky Larry Silverstein. Never forget the Israeli art students who just so happened to be in that building doing some undisclosed project for months and months before it imploded into its own footprint, essentially. So good morning, everybody. I see we have Osram, we have Pat, good to see you. We have Say What, and we have Eldon Bean. It's great to have you guys this morning. So yeah, we can never forget 9/11. We can never forget the Patriot Act, which was an over 1,000-page document just waiting in the wings that was immediately passed right after 9/11 that allowed unlimited domestic surveillance in violation of the Fourth Amendment and opened the door for our current technocratic surveillance state that we have. Of course, the COOF in 2020 was just the natural extension of that, making it now a biosecurity police state instead of just a national security police state. You know, instead of anybody could be a terrorist, now anybody could be harboring a terrorist and you don't even have any symptoms, right? So it's always the same people every single time. It's always the small hats behind everything, right? And before, like I tell you guys all the time, I used to think, well, maybe it's the Jesuits. No, it's the small hats. No, it's the Jesuits. Well, it's the Jesuits. They're the same people, the ancient Babylonian cult, right? Trying to take over the world and enslave mankind. For whatever reason, I have no idea what possesses somebody to do that. So today we're going to be on YouTube for just a little bit. And then we're going to have to go to Rumble because, well, for obvious reasons, there's a lot of stuff I have to show you that YouTube will definitely strike my channel for. So we're going to be on here for a little bit, let people come in, see that I'm streaming, and then we're going to head over there. The link is in the description. So let me start with Charlie Kirk. I don't know how you guys felt about Charlie Kirk. I wasn't personally his biggest fan, and mostly it had to do with his stance on Israel. But most other things he said, aside from being a statist who believes government can fix government, I did agree with a lot of what he said. I agreed with his stance on abortion. I agreed with his stance on traditional values, that we are a Christian nation. I agreed with a lot of what he said, but it just mainly was that sticking point with Israel that caused me, and the fact that he's a statist, like I said, that caused me not to want to watch him or listen to him. And now posthumously, I find that it seems like that may be a big part of why he was assassinated. He seems to have been red-pilled. Maybe it was when that kid stood up and challenged him on the Talmud at a college. I've shown that video on here before. You know, some people are saying, I see like Say What says, the black thing on Kirk's shirt that jumped to his neck and then bled out. Strange blood pack. Right? I know a lot of people are thinking that possibly it's just a psychological operation. Me personally, after seeing the video, and anything's possible, I think he was genuinely sacrificed to further an agenda, is what I initially thought. The very first thing I thought when I seen what had happened and I was told what had happened. is I thought, okay, well, we know the small hats are behind it, right? Well, what are they going to do? They never mind sacrificing a Christian, right? Because after all, that's what they teach that we're here for, is to be sacrificed for the small hats, right? And I'll drop the small hat thing when we get to Rumble, but for now, you guys understand. And so I was thinking, okay, is this going to be used to further the Gideon technology that they want to implement, which of course is Israeli technology? It's predictive behavioral analysis. It's pre-crime AI policing. I'm like, okay, so now they're going to blame anti-Semitism for Charlie Kirk's death and say that it was because he supported, small hats, that he had, that some crazed gunman, maybe he's going to paint people like us that know the truth out as, crazy conspiracy theorists who just couldn't stand what Charlie stood for, right? Well, that wasn't until Brian, actually, one of our subscribers, sent me some videos, and I actually see why Israel, well, let's not say, I would see why Israel, because we're on YouTube, would be upset at what Charlie was saying. Not saying this is directly related to his assassination, but anyway, check this out. Oh, I got to share. Boom. All right.
Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true, the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country that have done that. In fact, we have seen this with the recent retreat of Jewish donations that are no longer going to be administered to colleges, right? Mark Rowan, Leon Copperman. Can we get that full list? It's very powerful. The part of the, so that's totally true. And by the way, Tucker Carlson reinforces this. So I'm going to it was quite a day on the internet. Tucker Carlson was interviewing Candace Owens. We have Candace Owens coming up next hour. And Tucker Carlson mentions that Jewish Americans have primarily been financing cultural Marxist ideas. We said this, by the way, last week, and people came after us.
We were on top of it.
We actually said it in a different way. We said, I'm glad that Jewish Americans are reconsidering their financing of cultural Marxism. And people misunderstood it intentionally and slandered us as being anti-Semites. But listen to this. Tucker Carlson is completely correct by saying this, that the philosophical foundation of anti-whiteness has been largely financed by Jewish donors in the country.
Wonder if that had anything to do with anything. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that surprised me personally, because he had always been such a staunch defender of the small hats, and despite logic and rationality staring him in the face, and I'm thinking perhaps he was red-pilled to the situation, that his friends are not necessarily his friends. And I say this because of the style of execution that he experienced. It was very public, very graphic, and widely not televised, but recorded and spread around so that everybody can see it. The sad thing is one day his children will be able to see that video. And that, and that brings me to this point is, I personally, of course, the right's going to blame the left's going to blame the right. That's already happening. But the only thing I hate more than a Republican Party is the Democrat Party. I have to say that right now. Now, Republicans, as the people who are stuck in that left-right paradigm, Republicans are not, they're conservative, traditional, they're logical, they're rational people. And so we as people in the truth community have an ally in a lot of Republicans. Some of them are crazy, but when it comes to the Republican Party, the government, they're a bunch of corrupt scumbags, always have been. They're oligarchs who want to enslave everyone, just like the Democrats. But the Democrats and their supporters are batshit crazy. These people, the things I've been seeing online, and I hope people share my sentiment, at least my subscribers share my sentiment when it comes to this fact, is whether you like Charlie or not, he didn't deserve to die like that. Okay. And he aligned with a lot of our viewpoints, really, at least mine personally. And the only problem he had was he's a staunch defender of Israel, and that he was a statist, that he actually believes government can fix government. Those were his only issues in my book. But anti-abortion and all of the other stuff, traditional families, conservative values, I hold all those things personally, right? I just disagree with being a statist. So the things people on the left are saying are absolutely disgusting. Like there's something wrong with these people, and if all mental health issues were to disappear tomorrow, there would be no Democratic Party, period. That's a fact. And so, for instance, one of these videos that I had seen this morning, right when I woke up, very first thing I see is just absolutely disgusting and insane right here. It is. So check this out. These people are psychopaths. All right.
There are a lot of people that are like, no matter what side of politics you're on, you should never celebrate something bad happening to someone. I, on the other hand, do cheer when bad things happen to bad people.
Charlie Kirk just got shot.
Well, breaking fucking news, folks. Seems somebody just took a shot at one of the Fanta-Fascist's favorite 5-mile wide mouthpieces, Charles Chucklefuck Kirk.
So that's pretty disgusting. Whether you believe it was real, fake, I know I see some of you saying. Me, originally, I left my mind open to either possibility because, well, we know that they're very much capable of faking something like this. But if you watch the graphic video, the up-close one that I'm sure we've all seen by now, and some people are saying his ring moved from his pinky to his ring finger. To me personally, and I could be wrong, it looked like his pinky ring was extended, or his pinky finger was extended while he was holding the microphone, which made it look like the gold ring was in front of his ring finger, making it look like it was on his ring finger. And then after he was shot, he closed his finger, obviously, and then it was, you could see where it was in the ring finger. I zoomed in, slowed it down. That was my take on it. Another reason that I have that opinion is because when you watch the actual shooting, when it hits his neck, his body recoils before the blood starts coming out, which would be standard with a bullet, right? And his neck expands, his face expands because of the vascular trauma. That's very much real. They did a hyper realistic job if it's not an actual assassination, right? And plus the things he was talking about, the fact that he was anti-abortion, we know how much the small hats love child sacrifice. So I think that was another reason they were okay with doing it. It has the small hats written all over it, right? And that's not the only thing that he was talking about prior to that situation. But I'm going to save some of that stuff for Rumble. However, this reaction, whether you believe it was real or it wasn't, whatever your opinion is, I respect everyone's views on this. Me personally, I think it did happen. I think it's sad. I also don't think it was the Democrats. I don't think it was the Republic. I think it was the small hats, because they can't stand somebody with that level of power, influence, and especially political power. He's got millions of followers. Young people all over the country listen to this guy. And all of a sudden he starts coming out talking about the small hats behind Marxism, communism, the Islamic invasion that the Western civilization's experiencing right now, that they did. In fact, they wrote a plan. Have you noticed these guys love writing down and announcing exactly what they're going to do? They love telling you, like, yeah, we plan on, breeding them out, or we plan on causing mass immigration to basically replace that's called the Kalergi plan. I mean, they openly lay these plans out for you. You can read them. The rabbis come out and say it openly. This is obviously what they're intending on doing. So Joyce B says, on call for an uprising. or on Rumble, Call for an Uprising has an analysis video. I like him. He's all right. I'm open to it being real, yet remain skeptical. That's how I feel about it also. You've always got to have a degree of skepticism because like the video's titled, this is Psyop season, Psyop and false flag season. That's another thing. Speaking of disgusting reactions to supposed tragedies, and I know this one is a Psyop. I'm actually going to show you guys some video evidence of that in just a little bit. But that one guy the black guy stabbing the white girl on the light rail, right? That totally, I'm not going to say too much about it on YouTube, but what I will say is it's the reaction that disgusts me. It's the reaction that disgusts me. You've got a bunch of these people on X going, good, we don't care. Nobody cared when Jordan Neely was strangled by Daniel Penny, which again, another psyop. And when you guys see who's behind this, right, even behind the small hats created by the small hats, these secret societies, right? You've got the black secret societies and the white secret societies, and they work together, okay, to create these psychological operations to try to incite civil war in the United States. That's a fact, right? So let's see. Jerome 9 says, he's asked if I've seen his comments. He said, which tribe publicly killed JFK, Saddam, Gaddafi? Yeah, exactly. Exactly what I'm saying. And it's actually the public nature of the execution. And not to mention Benjamin Netanyahu comes out and says, oh, Charlie was killed for speaking the truth. He defended traditional conservative values and Christianity. And that's what that means. We know how they feel about Christians. We know exactly how they feel about it. They don't make any secret of how they feel about Christians at all. That they're there basically to be used by the small hats, to be sacrificed for the small hats and all that good stuff. So, and JFK, who went against the central banking system by essentially shutting down the Federal Reserve, issuing his own currency via Executive Order 11110, which is a real executive order. You can look it up, right? And going against there's another factor at play here too. It is the Vatican, okay? It's the papacy, which is just another group of small hats. They're the same people. And they hate Christianity as well. There's nothing that pleases the Catholic hierarchy more than the death of Protestants. They openly tell you this. It's in the Jesuit oath, first of all, and they openly tell you they despise. If you know any staunch Catholics, they despise Protestants with a passionate hatred. But why? Well, because they went away from the church. But maybe they went away from the church because they've seen the corruption in the church, the disgusting nature of the government of the church, and the fact that it's run by a bunch of small hats, which it very obviously is. So let me show you guys this real quick. This kid puts it pretty well as far as the Vatican's concerned. And trust me, it's both of them because they're all small hats. So that's how it works. All right, check this out. This kid puts it very well.
There are 9 Supreme Court justices, and all 9 are weapons of the Vatican. The Chief Justice of the Court is John G. Roberts. Roberts is a verified Knight of Malta, meaning he takes an oath of service to the papacy that supersedes any national duty or accountability. He serves the interest of Rome through his position in the U.S. A bulk of presidents and CIA directors have been Knights of Malta as well. Clarence Thomas, another Supreme Court justice, was Jesuit educated at the Private College of the Holy Cross, Catholic educated at St. Benedict the Moor Grammar School and Conception Seminary College. He also received the Benedict Leadership Award from Belmont Abbey College for service to Catholicism. If you've seen my videos, you know my stance on the Jesuits or the Jesuit order, and specifically the Jesuit schools in America. In the 19th century, the U.S. government was continuously providing
He's pronouncing it wrong. It's pronounced Jesuit.
Funding to Jesuit institutions in America. Abraham Lincoln cut this off. A quote from him regarding the Jesuits reads, this is in regard to the Civil War, "This war would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to popery that we now see our land reddened with the blood of her noblest sons. And look what happened to him. The third justice, Samuel Alito Jr., is a raised and practicing Roman Catholic. He received 2 honorary Catholic degrees from St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Philadelphia and the Catholic University of America. In 2017, he was inducted into the Sacred Military Constantinian Order of St. George, a papal knighthood similar to the previously mentioned Knights of Malta, this one specifically having ties to the Bourbon Two Sicilies family. This order contains a bulk of politicians globally, including Janos Adder, the president of Hungary, 2 former prime ministers of Ireland, the prime minister and the president of Dominica, and many others, including former leaders of Italy, Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia. The 4th Supreme Court Justice is Sonia Sotomayor. She's another born and raised Roman Catholic, weird, and graduated as valedictorian at Cardinal Spellman High School.
So all of these, so that's just a conspiracy theory, right? That the Catholic, that Rome's still alive and well, and that it's trying to conquer the world. The ultimate realization of the papal bull Unum Sanctum, which has reduced the world to chattel property held in trust, subject to the Pope for salvation, right? Well, it's still the small hats, and they have hijacked Christianity as their vessel for world domination, right? And they use these Abrahamic religions against each other. Now, I seen somebody in the chat, and I have to tell you, I'm open to this as well. I believe it was Tommy. Tommy said JFK, RFK, MLK, Psyops as well. I have heard and seen some compelling evidence on JFK staging his own death at the White House weeks before the actual assassination, like a mock assassination ritual. So anything's possible. But what I can tell you is, yes, the world is a stage. The world's absolutely a stage. All of these players on the world stage are actors, and everything that you see that's fed into your consciousness is designed to influence your emotions and serve some agenda or another by either riling you up against people. But I can tell you one thing. I don't think that they want people looking at the small hats, which is exactly immediately where I look every single time. And I know for a fact that the hierarchy of Rome, the Vatican, and the hierarchy of the small hats have always been in bed with one another, going all the way back to Jesus Christ. Okay. You had the Pharisees and the Sadducees would go to the Roman, officials' houses for parties and get-togethers, and they would regularly hang out, eat together, everything. Like, they were tight, right? Because they're both two halves of the same coin, subjugating entire populations, and they always have been, right? So if we go to the Jewish Encyclopedia, for instance, let me stop sharing this because he goes on for quite some time. But you get the point. They're everywhere. So if we go to the Jewish Encyclopedia here, let me pull this up real fast. This is going to be right here. And I have it. I got so many tabs open. Forgive me for taking just a couple moments to find. I didn't expect to pull this up. Okay, here it is. It says right here, so this is JewishEncyclopedia.com. It's in their articles. This is about the Rothschilds. They've got a whole fluff piece in here. But if you know what you're looking for, it's not a fluff piece at all. It says right here that it is a somewhat curious sequel to the attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds, talking about a central bank, that at the present time, the latter are guardians of the papal treasure. So whether it was the Jesuits or the actual small hats that orchestrated this event with Charlie, and whether it's real or fake, they're for sure behind it, and they for sure do not want you looking at them. Beyond that, like I said, the trauma looked real. Everything about it looked pretty real. The ring thing was suspicious, but like I said, that could be, and of course that could be put out there as misdirection as well. We always have to be aware of the psyop within a psyop, right? And because they want you to think it was staged, they could, here's another thing. When you watch the initial video, the one from far away, the guy zooms in on Charlie right before the bullet hits. He zooms in, almost just perfect timing to zoom in. It's the same way that those Israelis got arrested with the camera dancing, and they said, "What are you doing here?" When they were interrogated, they said, "Oh, we're here to document the event. We're here to document the event." That's what they said. And then, were they investigated? Were they jailed? Were they no, they were sent directly back to Israel almost instantly, right? Same thing with Osama bin Laden's entire family. George Bush sent some, I think it was Secret Service. Somebody went around and collected the entire bin Laden family and whisked them out of the country before any investigation could be done right after 9/11. So, it's the same people and they work together, right? Two sides of the same coin. And there's nothing that pleases, like I said, the Jesuits more than the death of white Protestants. So Charlie's what you'd call a WASP. He's a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Okay, he's part of a massive, wealthy WASP community. I don't think they work together. I'm not necessarily saying they're good people that, you know what I mean? They're obviously oligarchs as well, but point is, it doesn't sadden them to see a Protestant publicly executed like that, unfortunately. So it's very sad. The reactions are very sad. So we're going to go over to Rumble in just a couple moments. Before we do, since it is 9/11, I just wanted to play this video for you guys. This guy kind of hits the nail on the head. Also, if you're watching this replay and there's any gaps in the playback, that's because I got copyright struck, and so I had to remove it in order to keep this up on YouTube. But yeah, this is only a minute 40. I'm going to head over to Rumble. The link is in the description of the video. If you're not already over there, then make sure you head over there just before we shut this down. So here, let me play this. This guy hits it right on the head. And who doesn't know that the small hats were behind 9/11? Who doesn't know that by now? 2025, who's been away? So if you're asleep in 2025, you're going to remain asleep. I'm sorry to say, you're never going to wake up. There's just no way. But if you were lucky enough to wake up before 2025, and by now you do not know that the small hats were behind 9/11, well, then you're still asleep. Sorry to tell you. But here, let's check this out.
September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, the U.S. Army released an intelligence report that said that the Zionists were pros at carrying out terrorist acts that made it appear that it was done by Arabs. Wake up, Americans. You're about to be pulled into a war with Arabs, with the Muslim world, and you're going to be made to believe that something horrible that happened to you was done by the Muslims. But it wasn't done by the Muslims. It was done by a wild card, the Israeli Mossad, that's cunning and ruthless and can carry out attacks on Americans and make it look like Arabs did it. That's not my conspiracy theory. That's the U.S. Army report.
The day before, published the day before 9/11.
You can call me any name you want to call me. That's a U.S. Army report. They warned us. They were telling us what Israel is capable of doing. The government, American society had not yet been conquered by the Zionists up to September 11. This country fell to Zionism on September 11, 2001. How did America fall so quickly and become Israeli occupied territory? Because that's what we are. The United States of America is Israeli occupied territory. The entire country. They took over the Congress, they took over the White House, they took over the Pentagon, they took over the CIA, they took over the Defense Intelligence Agency, they took over everything. They took over the American evangelical churches, they took over the news media, they took over cable television, they took over the whole country since 2001. How? How did they do it? Jeffrey Epstein. It's just that simple.
Well, and I'm sorry to say, and he's right about that. That last part is probably one of the most important points. And that's something Charlie was talking about just recently. I'm surprised. I'm honestly shocked that he woke up to that degree, and not saying he was actually conscious of the way the world works. He's still a statist. He still thought government could fix government. Still thought Donald Trump wasn't just directly in bed with the small hats because, well, he obviously absolutely is. For instance, it's illegal to burn an Israeli flag, and it was not illegal to burn an American flag. So you could be here in the United States, and I'm not saying because the flag's just a symbol of statism and patriotic drivel anyways, but it's actually the East India Trading Company flag, so I don't give a shit about that flag at all. My flag is the Michigan flag, right? Because your country's your state, but I'm not getting into that right now. You could, until people started making a stink about it, you could burn an American flag, but you could not burn an Israeli flag. And people started noticing, the great noticing, going, that's pretty odd. Why can I burn an American flag, but not an Israeli flag there, Mr. Trump? So Trump had to do some damage control and further abridged your First Amendment freedom of expression by passing an executive order or writing an executive order that says that you could face a year in jail for burning an American flag. And he doesn't give a shit about the American flag. In fact, he's piecemealing us out to all the other foreign investors, all of foreign countries. You got there, and then he's getting these people. And I'm sorry if you're a MAGA person and you're like, all the way on the Trump train. And I'm not saying everything he's doing is terrible, but he's getting you guys to cheer for him piecemealing out and selling out the United States to all these foreign investors and AI technocrats. Right? Well, I just got $1 billion investment, or I just got $1 trillion investment, or $500 billion investment. Well, who's investing? Foreign countries, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, right? Muslim countries and countries that do not share our values. Okay. And yeah, so you got these investments. Well, what do you think the investment is? The investment is to set up a company here and use you as tax chattel to build whatever they've got going on. That's the whole point. So, Joyce B says, I was shocked too. Then I thought of all Charlie's statements leading up to his death need to be viewed with analysis eyes. Was he planting statements, etc.? Everything has to held for review. So yes, you got to remain skeptical. And I agree with that. Right. Yes. And Graham 9 says, ye Americans are a slave to the crown. The mile strip in London City, US. Yeah, that's what we talk about all the time on this channel. And see, that mile strip in London is actually just a commercial extension of the Vatican or the papacy. It always has been. Rome founded London in the 1st century after Christ's death and has always controlled it. The Magna Carta made permanent its sovereignty. And then all of the companies that came out through the colonization era to make good on the papal bull Dum Diversas, or the doctrine of discovery, all the commercial entities, the companies that came out of there actually came out of London, the merchants of London. It's always been the merchant center of the world for at least the last 1,000 years. And all of these companies were the forerunners to your now national governments, like the East India Trading Company. We use their frickin' flag. The East India Trading Company flag, look up the East India Trading Company flag. It's almost identical to the United States flag. Okay. The Hudson Bay Company became Canada. Right. So, and then the Delaware Company later on became the new United States. So and these companies, they were all chartered and started out of London. And they were all chartered to go and colonize, commercial expansion on behalf of ultimately the Vatican. That's a fact. That's a fact. So basically in the 1400s, there might've been 15, either way, the Pope does papal bull Dum Diversas, where he basically says, it's the doctrine of discovery. He says, go forth, all ye Christian nations, and conquer the heathens and take their lands. And then, of course, give me their wealth. Right. That's real Christian-like. So and in all fairness, some of these places that were conquered were savages that were doing human sacrifice, but so are the small hats behind the frickin' Vatican in the first place. So, I mean, kind of hypocritical, right? But yeah, they went out and they colonized these lands. And then that's part of the reason why England cordoned off all the forestry during the 15, 16, 1700s and pushed everybody into cities, because now these oligarchs had a bunch of manufacturing to do, a bunch of consumer goods to make with all the new resources coming in from the colonized lands. And that's when the tax plantations really took off, right? So, all right, well, listen, we are going to head to Rumble because now I want to get into the thick of this stuff. So the link is in the description. I hope you guys head over there. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down and we can actually talk about what we really think. And I'm going to show you some videos, and I understand, like Joyce B and several other people's point of view, where you have to keep an open mind, remain skeptical. It could all just be a psyop to influence your emotions. But if it is, it's influencing mine in the wrong way, because it just makes me look directly at the small hats, which is who you always have to look at. You always have to look at the small hats. So go ahead and click that Rumble link, and I will see you guys over on Rumble.